Hello, I'm Justin Smith, and this is the Listen Now week. And it is now day 3. And we'd love you to follow the hashtag, please, and also to share these videos because we want to start having a very open and honest conversation. That's something that we have kept quiet for a long time, and keeping quiet hasn't helped, and that is suicide. And today I'm talking to some of the people that have been left behind. They have lost people that they love to suicide, and they have that enormous pain that comes with that, and those questions as to why the person that they love took their own life. Jon and Sue Stebbins lost their son, and ever since they have taken that pain and they've tried to do something constructive with it, and they have achieved because they have spent a lot of time working with families and helping them to cope. They are good people, as you're about to find out. We wanted to have these honest discussions, these open discussions about suicide, and it's how do you think it has changed over the last couple of decades? I mean, are we getting better at it, or was it getting worse?
Well, I think probably it's more openly talked about out in the community, but not through the media. And that blockage that the media puts on it is, I think, very sad, because it is it is big in the community. It's a bit like the elephant in the room out there.
I think there's more services now. Back when our Matthew died, there was very little around for supporting those bereaved by suicide, and that has certainly improved, but need a lot more to also.
Yeah. But that discussion with media, it's not necessarily always just about reporting it. It's about not pretending and not imagining that it's not there, And I've talked to a couple of people about this, and we talk about overdoses from heroin in the newspaper, the road toll. We sort of go, okay, we've got this many this year, and it's up this many and down this many. Do we need to talk about suicide in the same way?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, it's understandable. It's pretty scary for people when they have to face it, because it is talking about, it's talking about issues that are just not discussed generally because of the fear associated with it. But
is it fear, Jon, or is there a lack of understanding that is part of this?
Well, probably the two go together. I mean, it's fear until someone explains it and can take some of that heat out of it. And so I would suggest that it's probably still at the fear stage for most people.
There's on the Compassionate Friends website, you have a memoriam section where people can leave messages. And a mother, I'm sure you would probably know this one, a mother left one about her son, and the message that was left was, I will never understand why you did what you did. I would imagine that there are a lot of people that have had that exact sentiment.
Yes, for me, going back, it was so important after Matthew died to search and go back and talk to his friends. It was like trying to piece the puzzle together to find out as much as I could of what led up to that day, and I put a lot of energy into that, and I reached a stage where I guess I accepted that there'd be answers I would never know, and I had to reach that stage where I was comfortable with that. But that why is very, very common with everyone.
And I would imagine that is shock and sadness and anger as you're moving through that why. There's a lot of different stages to that why, I would think.
Emotions, yes.
Yeah. Actually, that was an interesting difference in the way in which Sue and I grieved, particularly in those early days. I think we were fortunate in that someone told us that we were going to grieve differently, and that sort of stuck. But whereas Sue was looking for details about why Matthew specifically, reached the point of suicide. I wasn't interested in that. As far as I was concerned, he died and he wasn't about coming back. But what I wanted to know is, why did people suicide? And so I started looking at the issue from the head, if you like, whereas Sue was much more basic in looking at it from the point of view of direct feelings, and Matthew specifically. But certainly it
both are very valid, aren't they? Both very valid reactions.
We learned that in the long run, yes.
Mm.
When you hear people talk about, and I'm sorry to have to use this word, but when people talk about cowardice, and they talk about people who take their own lives as being cowards and not thinking of the people that they have left behind, what's your reaction when you hear that?
Quite the reverse, I think.
Yes, I mean, for us, I know Matthew really loved us, and the last thing he would want to do would be to hurt us. I think it just reached a stage where there was no other alternative in that moment, and we certainly don't look on it like that, but I know some people do.
But I mean, that has been the thing that has been said many times.
Probably is totally irrelevant, really. It's more, I think we reached a stage of thinking that for Matthew, he'd reached the point where he couldn't see any other answers. And I can't imagine the courage it must have taken to then take that final step, because he was a very caring guy, and
a gentle guy too. So
that the violence associated with it and the impact on us, I'm sure he must have been so desperate for some way to get rid of the pain, to bypass those things.
Mm. Yes, I think it's more a matter of, just getting rid of the pain than wanting to actually die.
I guess for what we're trying to do with this series is to reach out to people who are at that point, and to people around them, and to try to walk back from that moment, that moment of severe pain where there is no other option, but just to pull back and look at that differently and approach that differently, and I guess to talk about it. I mean, what do we do for people in that situation? How do we approach it?
Yeah.
Look, in some ways, when we started, we had advantages that many people don't have. We had a lot of very caring people around us for a start, and that was important. But we also had been working with people in distress. I was a counselling psychologist working as one, and I had some sense that about what to do when this occurred with Matthew, and I think it was instinctive, a lot of our movements in those early days, because the first year was fairly much a blank. But first of all, we immediately decided we were going to talk about suicide, that we were going to say that that's how Matthew died, it was suicide, and not step aside from that. And the other thing, I think, because of the experience we'd had with working with people with problems, we knew that it had to be hit pretty well head on if we were going to come through. And we did. We talked about it, and I think that helped. A lot of this is in retrospect, looking back and questioning why we did what we did, but I think that would be the explanation there.
So if you think, if we talk in code about what happened, or we leave it for other people to sort of guess or talk about Matthew in a different way, it's not going to help anybody else. No one's going to learn from this, and you're going to carry it around a little longer. Well, I guess you're always going to carry it around, but you're going to carry it around differently if you don't talk about it in a truthful way.
Yes, yeah. I think certainly, yes, with getting the younger people to, this what's happening here with this is that openness and to be able to talk and check in with them and, just bringing it all out in the open, particularly for their friends. And so I think there's more awareness with that now, which I certainly wasn't around in that sense when Matthew died. But as Jon said, we were very open up, of course, once Matthew died and talking about suicide. And it was us who had to give everyone permission to talk about it because people were worried they would upset us if they talked about it. So we gave them permission to do that, which you don't have any energy, so that took a fair bit. But we wanted to keep the conversation open.
As well, what I would imagine with suicide and people approaching you is if somebody passes away from cancer or it's a car crash, they will come up to you quite quickly and they will say, and please stop me if I'm wrong here, but they will come up to you quite quickly and say, "Oh, we're so sorry about what has happened, and we really must do something about the roads, to stop people and get them to slow down." And if somebody has died from cancer, someone will say, "Oh, look, we've really got to get a cure for cancer." There's an approach to that. But when there is suicide, there is no way that they can come to you, or they feel that there is no way they can come to you and say anything. So therefore, you probably had some people that you loved that actually didn't say anything at all.
Yes.
Did that happen?
Yes, that happened with a few people. And what we found, we just said to them, please talk about Matthew, talk about it with us. Yes, and the ones who said, look, I don't know what to say to you, but I'm here, that was probably the most helpful for us. And just a hug was really important. Like when I went back to work, and I worked in a welfare area, the staff didn't know how to support me except the cleaner did. He just came up, didn't say anything, gave me a hug. And yes, it's just those little things that make a big difference.
So people who worked in a welfare area that were used to dealing with, talking with people, couldn't speak to you. Isn't that extraordinary? Doesn't that say a lot?
Very hard. It drew on my experience later on to support others, but at that time they found that very hard. Yes.
Where do we go to from here? How do we change the conversation from here? And what do people need to look out for people that they love and that they're concerned about?
We've been doing. We're setting up in Compassionate Friend a new initiative. It's an online chat service for siblings who have lost a brother or sister, and we're looking at also setting up a sort of some guidelines for the people that run groups. If someone in their group is contemplating suicide, what do you do? What do you say? And when you look at the statistics, you realise that probably only about 1 in 10,000 people actually seriously think about suicide. They might talk about how they don't feel that life is worth going on with. They'll use those terms. But we were discussing with the group leaders and so on, the idea that they may never actually meet someone who seriously thinks about suicide, but they are going to meet people who are contemplating.
Yeah.
And so what it falls back on is really just stopping and listening. And it's almost as simple as that. Rather than feeling fearful about that next step, just stop and listen and dig in on that listening bit.
Don't stop listening.
Yeah. We've seen that happen.
And Sue, how do we need to change the conversation as we go forward, as we talk about suicide in the media, amongst ourselves, through social media as well?
Yes, I think the social media has been certainly a big introduction with Compassionate Friends. That's really, I think, linked in with younger people, which wasn't there before. And I know they talk, or they'll see things on social media, and I think that's been a very good tool. And just trying, as I guess parents, opening up the conversation and trying to keep it open and talking as much as we can about it. And if they're seeing more of it in the media, they'll talk more about it, not like where it was kept out. But talking, we noticed they talk amongst themselves a lot. Well, they may not always talk to their parents, but they'll talk to their friends, and that's often their greatest support. And what we also found with the adult siblings that came along to the support group, they were equally as worried about their parents as the parents were worried about them. And they took on that responsibility, a lot of them also.
Isn't that interesting? And you think, well, if only we could just sort of get you together a little bit more.
Yes, the family unit is just it really falls apart for a while.
Well, I thank you both very much. Again, well done on all the work that you've done in this area, and I appreciate it. What's it like talking about it all these years later, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, we haven't. Yes, it takes us back. Always takes us back when we talk about it to those early years. But I think we've reached a stage where I know I can carry Matthew comfortably with me. I always refer to him as he sits quietly on my shoulder now. But it certainly can take us back, but we manage it much better, don't we? Yeah.
If we're being used much more in Compassionate Friends as sort of what would you call it, resources from the past, knowing things that they would like to know. And it's an interesting place to have reached. Yeah. Because I guess if people ask me what would I say is the most important thing now, I'd probably say something like understanding suicide is very complex. Don't expect simple answers, and don't expect that it'll happen quickly. Any changes that are going to occur are going to require time because it's so complex.
Gee, that's important, isn't it? That's important. It is not a simple thing. We're certainly not going to fix it. We're not going to change the conversation quickly. We're not going to be able to cure somebody. If anyone was thinking in those terms, it's not going to happen like that. We've got to...
And each person is uniquely different. So that's another part of the complexity, is that you've got to deal with it one-on-one always, with sort of background knowledge that can be used, of course, but it's still a one-on-one way of approaching it. I like the term you used. Was it a dark cloud you used?
I have heard that before. Yeah, dark cloud. Yeah.
Using terms like that with kids, I reckon would probably work.
Well,
because I'm sure most of them have experienced that.
That dark cloud. Yeah, and clouds move along, don't they? Yeah.
Yes. So I think the biggest thing is that with what we've been able to do is give hope for people that you can survive. And that was what the biggest thing I think we could contribute in the support groups, is that we've been able to get through it, and we hope that would help others.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me. Thank you.
Pleasure.